Unfortunately, USDA is not allowing me to travel right now, but so I excuse me, not escaped, but missed out on the opportunity to come to Walls, South Dakota in January. Trust me, it's not a whole lot warmer here than it is for you guys there. So it is good to be back virtually and into South Dakota. And I thanks for the introduction. I am in a new role. We're going to talk a little bit about that and give you some background on some climate issues impacting soils, and then talk about what we can say for this year at this point. So I think we'll just have to hold on to the end for questions. I really like interaction, but I'm not sure our setup is going to allow that today very well, if I'm correct. So, okay, let's go ahead and get rolling here. We're going to talk about a little bit about the Climate Hub, so you know who we are. Talk about some longer-term issues on soils and climate, and then do an outlook for 2022. Just so you know, I've tried to include all the websites where all the products that I came from today. You can grab and take pictures of if you want to, or if you get them afterwards. Have someone send me an email, and I'm happy to share the slides, because I think everything here is public domain you can get to regularly. Okay, first thing about the Climate Hubs. We are at the USDA. These have been around since 2014. So they started up when I was still in South Dakota, but there was an increase in staffing to get some full-time directors, because the previous directors were doing other things at the same time. And I could not come back to Iowa. My wife and I are both from Iowa. Our kids have gone through Iowa State. Though one side story, a third of our fourth children decided they're going to go to school at mines because he wanted to be a mining engineer. This is about the time we were getting ready to move. And I went, crap. One of my kids is finally going to go in-state, and we're leaving the state, so we're going to miss out on in-state tuition. But it worked out okay. Since you graduate from South Dakota High School, you get in-state tuition. So we were paying in-state tuition in 2 states. We had one of our daughters at the same time. So, quick background about the hubs. I'm actually working outside what is my actual area with the hubs. We work regionally. There are 10 of them nationally. The 8 states that I go from Minnesota to Missouri over to Michigan and Ohio. But since that covers the bulk of the Corn Belt, we do work on Corn Belt soybean area issues that expand in the Northern Plains. The Northern Plains is based out of Colorado. The director is I'm drawing a blank, Dr. Peck. They focus more on rangeland issues, so they'd be a good one to engage somewhere along the way too. She and her coordinator, Kelly, both great folks. And we work in 3 areas: assessments and syntheses, outreach and education, and technicals. Listed on the right there. This is the kind of outreach and education kind of thing that we do. That's a lot of what I used to do, so I still continue that with the clients. We'll just jump through some of these. We do work a lot in partnership, like working with Extension or Root to work. They're a very strong partner of ours, and we do this in our 8 and expanding into the plans we have what's called the Midwest Ag Climate Team. Extension, a few other services together to talk about issues of what's going on and issues related to producers. And we do try to work on a wide variety of crops. In the Northern Plains, you have a pretty good variety of crops in addition to the rangeland areas. People think there's just corn and soybeans in our area. There's actually a wider range, especially in our eastern states and up around the Great Lakes, that are impacted by climate issues quite a bit differently than we are. Things like trees that in winter are pushing them performance early, and then being hit by freezes. Those kinds of issues are a bit different from what we get with corn and soybeans. Okay, we're going to touch on just a few issues right now, try to keep this moving along, of, some of the longer term changes in climate, and how that's impacting man, especially from a soil standpoint. One of the bigger things that we are seeing is bigger events and bigger indemnity kind of problems because of some of these major events. We continue the graphic on the right-hand side is from NOAA, National Oceanic Administration, talking about billion-dollar disasters. And the bars are by count of number of billion-dollar disasters each year, and then the colors are different types of disasters. And these are coming frequently and at stranger times of year. We had this December 2 big tornado outbreaks in the East, and then a very strong it was usually a summertime event called a derecho. That was in addition to the one we had in Iowa last year. Some of these events. And this is leading to large crop indemnities. The graphic on the left-hand side is from USDA's RMA Management Agency, showed indemnities paid in 2019. Remember 2019, that was the very wet spring, spring and early summer, where there were large areas that never planted. There was delayed planting and yield that didn't quite places. So those brown areas are areas of $10 million in indemnities for each of those counties. So these are some of the issues that we're dealing with. Just a couple other quick changes, these deserve a lot longer conversation, but I don't want to dwell on them a lot today. We are getting warmer. The graphic on the upper right-hand side shows about that. This shows temperature change over the beginning of the last century. The reddest areas are greater than 3.5 Fahrenheit. So South Dakota and the plains are places where we're warming most. But we're warming in different ways than you would expect. Down below it shows the different in winter and summer. And you see that there's a lot of warming. Our warming is occurring in winter. I'd say, Todey, you're nuts. It's cold out here. Yes, we still get cold, but the frequency of those cold events, it's less, not quite as severe. We're seeing a lot more warm periods like we did back in December this year. So warming is occurring in the winter and in overnight temperatures. So I'll show you my graphic. One thing this is doing is increase our frost freeze. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Here's a graphic that talks about, shows that difference in South Dakota summer temperature. The graphic on the left-hand side is June through August average, and then average over the whole state. Each one of those dots is a year, goes 95 on the left, on the right, 2020. I didn't include 2021 in that, sorry. And the longer term trend, there's a lot of the dust stands out there, but the trend is fairly flat overall. But the lower right-hand side, look at minimum temperature in the state in the summertime, and you see quite a bit of a difference. We're seeing more warm temperatures overnight, warmer temperatures overnight. In the eastern part of the state, that leads to some very warm overnight temperatures that stress livestock and crops of vegetation. It's not as much of a problem in the western part of the state, but it is a problem that we're seeing more frequently. The one that is, or the bigger changes affecting a lot of the soil side is our precipitation change. This is a graphic similar to the previous one, changed since the beginning of the 20th century. The greener the area is, the darker green areas are 15% increases in precipitation since the beginning of the last century. And you see that the northern plains also is one of those areas of a large increase in precipitation. The areas that are underground are seeing decreases in precipitation. So if you look off to the west, over in Montana and Wyoming, for example, we're actually seeing a bit of an opposite, where we're seeing some drying. And then I always like to point out Southern California and Arizona, and what's happening in there. Actually seeing drying in that area, and that's actually the desert already, putting more people there. So that's leading to some of the issues. But even more importantly is some of the changes in seasonal precipitation. If you look especially in spring and fall, the right-hand side, and spring here is May and fall is September, November, and you see lots of green. We're seeing more of our precipitation occurring in off-season, or less of the growing season, middle part of the growing season. So that is seeing some different issues. We'll talk a little bit more here. I'm going to jump past this one because that kind of reiterates the same thing. But the other side of this, we still have droughts. You're saying, okay, overall increase in precipitation, yes, but we have drought. Drought still exists. It's not away. But it is somewhat less frequent than it has been. Here's an example for South Dakota, something called the Palm Drought Severity Index. It's a measure of drought, a long-term drought issue. The bars up green are wet, or they're not drought. The tan bars go down drought periods. So the Dust Bowl again stands out, and you have 2021 standing out in this graphic. So we still have droughts; they still exist. They're just quite as frequent as they used to be back in the 30s. Okay. Now, the other problem we're seeing a lot with this, and why I'm happy to talk to a no-till association, this whole issue with soil health is appropriate for the climate situation, because with more precipitation occurring in our region, and it's happened in the Midwest too, with more precipitation falling in the spring and fall, we don't have something covering the soil that puts our soils up to soil loss. Even not big rainfall events, an inch or two, can lead to situations of soil loss, or less than that if your soil is frozen, because you can thaw the soil near the surface and get more runoff, even less precipitation, that can lead to soil loss. So that's why soil health, reducing tillage, cover crops, fit climate issue and adapting climate, they fit like hand in glove. We encourage the same kind of activities related to this. Because the other part about losing our soil, losing our topsoil, losing the water holding capacity, some of the best holding capacity. So when you do have droughts, you're just drought and those kinds of issues. So those same kinds of things, reducing, eliminating tillage, cover crops, or in our area, modifying nutrient plants. We had some issues fall because people were able to get crops out early, they matured early, things were dry enough that they had crops out in the field, so some places were still doing fall application at night or putting manure out. But unfortunately, we had soil temperatures that were in the even 70s when this was happening. Our extension partner, you got to stop this, because one, lose nutrient value, two, that those nutrients are going to and add to our water quality problems. So we're fighting the same fight as you guys are. Okay, one other change is from a frost-free season standpoint, our frost-free season is getting longer. The one downside of this is not as consistent as we would like it to be. I know you've even had some problems where you had some later season freezes after rangeland started growing that has knocked it back in a couple of years. So, and that works the same thing for crops otherwise. But we are seeing overall long growing season, and that, along with more precipitation, longer growing season. This is a graphic showing, what has happened in North Dakota in the way of corn and soybeans. The tan bar on the bottom is number of acres of corn since 1970, and then the green is the number of acres of soybeans. We've seen large expansion of these crops, some from genetics, but partially because of climate reasons we're able to grow these kinds.
Dennis,
yes.
Can you turn off the video once and see if the sound improves? You keep breaking up a little bit.
Well, because the other problem is I'm hearing myself delayed by about a second and a half, and that's messy.
Okay.
Can he call in or no?
Okay, let's try that.
Let's try that.
Hello?
Yeah. Yes, keep going. I'm turning the mic off on my computer here once.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead here. All right. If you have any more questions about that, and please note if you do that we can do, because there's a lot I threw at you just there. Happy to talk about that more. Okay, we're going to jump now into looking at where we are, current conditions, and talk about what we can talk about this year. So when we talk about outlooks, we don't jump to a forecast. We always start with what's our status, what's our situation right now. And so we're looking at last 30 days precipitation, not a big precipitation time of year, but it last 30 days is always good to look at. Upper left-hand side is total precipitation, and the graphic we're seeing is basically goes from Montana, North Dakota on the top to Colorado, Kansas, and then parts of Oklahoma and New Mexico on the bottom. So you're kind of in the upper middle here if you can see my cursor. This is total precipitation, again, last 30 days. On the lower right-hand side, we're getting percent of normal precipitation. So we haven't had much precipitation, but it's not a big time of year, but we're 25% or less than that average of precipitation. This is partially related to La Nina. I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. Not too far away, up in North Dakota, northern Minnesota, have been wetter than average, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming have been wetter than average. If we go back longer, we're going to, that was a shorter term. This is a longer term look. Back in the last 6 months, again, precipitation, the upper left-hand side. Most of western South Dakota in the yellow here, 6 to 9 inches of precipitation. The lower right-hand side, that puts us generally, the tan is 70 to 90%, the yellow is 90 to 100%, the greens are above average. So depending on where you are, you've been a little bit below or a little bit above going back to the last 6 months. Unfortunately, that came late for rangeland and spring crops. That happened during the really dry period. But you can see up in northeast South Dakota, they turned very wet and actually have had the opposite of you folks and have wet conditions in the fall, and that's going to carry over to the springtime. So kind of what we're showing you here is, when we're talking about drought, we're going to talk about drought a little bit more in a bit. We look at a lot of different things, shorter-term, longer-term precipitation to kind of put things in context for us. From a snow depth standpoint, we are looking more like the northern plains right now in the way of we have the teal colored area is 4 to 8 inches. We had a 12-inch snow last week, which was that's an awfully big snowfall for down here and all through the center part of Iowa. So we have good snowpack Iowa up into Minnesota, North Dakota. Only the northeast part of South Dakota has snow. You folks don't have much of anything. Sounds like even the northern Black Hills are a little bit short of snow from what I've been hearing recently too. Now, we're going to talk about soil moisture here. We want to. Soil moisture is the thing we always need to know. When you talk about precipitation, the biggest issue is what's in our soils for our crops, rangeland, whatever, to be able to grow. We don't have, the South Dakota Mesonet has a few stations around the state trying to get an assessment of what's going on in soil moisture. They're point values, so they're a guide for us. But when we want to look at regionally, it becomes a bit more of a problem. So what I'm showing you is a NASA product. You can go look at these if you want to. It's a combination of satellite and some computer models together to try to assess what's going on in the way of soil moisture. And the color scale is similar to what we've seen before. If you're farther down into the tan, red, brown, you're drier, and these are percentiles. So basically you go from 0 to 100. If you're down in the low numbers, you're down some of the lowest on record. If you're up in the blues, you're some of the wettest on record. So across South Dakota, what it's saying is that most of your area is closer to average. Now that could be the 30th percentile to the 70th percentile. So you may be a little bit dry, but it's in the middle of the distribution. There are bits of green that would be above, and then the northeast South Dakota shows up as well above. Southern plains, lots of dry still carrying over in part of Iowa. So you kind of take this with a grain of salt, especially this time of year, because it's a little hard for the models to catch everything that's going on. I would be happy to hear what you folks are thinking your waste soil moisture situation is looking like right now. Okay, just then another review of where we've been in the way of air temperatures. This is data from Cottonwood. We don't have data directly from Wall, but we have from the research farm at Cottonwood. And this is the last, or since October 1. The dates are on the bottom, October 1 until the present. The blue lines are each day, and then the high and low for each day, so the numbers are on the left. And then the tan bar, the top of the tan bar is the average daily high, the bottom of the tan bar is the average daily low. So it gives you an idea of where you've been each day. So early in the fall and then continuing on into early December, we had a number of days that were well above average in the way of temperatures, almost near record. The bars at the top are the record highs. Since then, we've had a number of warm periods, but also some cold periods, and we're going to get some more of that here coming on now. And that cold is, while we like the warmth, the cold is not a bad thing. Knocks back some insects, freezes up our soils, what we like to see. So that's kind of where we are with that. I mentioned drought earlier. This is the most recent, as was issued this morning, released this morning, the U.S. Drought Monitor. On the upper left-hand side is the national map. On the lower right-hand side is the map for the Northern Plains Climate Hub, blown in for over the Northern Plains area. If you're not familiar with this map, you should get familiar with it. Just a reminder, anything that's white is not considered in any kind of a problem. The yellow is abnormally dry, meaning it's dry, but it's not a serious problem yet. And then the scale goes from D1, the tan area, moderate drought, all the way up to the brown, which is exceptional drought. So much of western South Dakota is still considered in some form of drought. Mostly D1, a little bit of D2 near the river, and I guess I should look down here on the lower right-hand side, and then D2 over in the northwestern counties, and then just abnormally dry further to the south. And that's carrying on from those, the recent dryness, but also the dryness that was carried on from earlier in the year, those longer-term assessments. Note that we are always looking for people to comment on how they think this looks around them, because this is created by a national author, but there are a number of people in each state, especially with extension, who have an ability to talk to the national author, saying, here's what we're seeing, here's what the data looks like in our area, to give it a little better refined look, and to help refine what this map looks like. Okay? All right, we're going to jump ahead now and talk about what we can say about the outlooks. These were just updated today. They are updated the third Thursday of the month, and in fact I had to cut out on another webinar where we were talking about these with a more regional audience. I work with some partners there. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about, I mentioned La Nina earlier. When we're talking about La Nina and the opposite phased El Nino, we're talking about sea surface temperatures in the Pacific Ocean, down near the equator. When that water is warmer than average, it's called El Nino. When it's colder than average, which is what it is now, it's called La Nina. This is always near and dear to my heart because I did some of my PhD on this. Now you think, okay, it's all the way to the Pacific. How does that affect us? Well, because it influences things in the atmosphere, and things in the atmosphere in the Pacific then influence things in the atmosphere over North America. So it's not a direct relationship, but there are some things that we can say when we're in an El Nino or La Nina. And in fact, the central U.S. has behaved very much like we would expect a La Nina winter to behave this year. And I'll talk about that more here in just a second. What we can say is that La Nina is going on currently and will probably continue to affect us into the spring. These blue bars are, well, basically there's groups of 3 bars here, and those are focused on 3-month periods. So like JFM is January, February, March. FMA is February, March, April. And the three bars are the probability of being in La Nina, which is blue, the gray, which is neutral between El Nino and La Nina, and then the red probability of El Nino. So the three bars add up to 100%. So like December, January, February, we're in a La Nina, so it's 100% probability. By January, February, March, the probability drops to like 95, but we're still going to be in La Nina likely. And that blue bar is the highest one until we get to April, May, June. So by the time we hit early summer, La Nina probably fades away and doesn't impact us anymore. So those influence the outlooks, and I'll talk about those when we go through those. So now I'm going to go through the outlooks here, starting with the next week, next couple weeks, and then out to several months in advance to tell you what we can say. I was joked about earlier. I said, yeah, it's going to rain. It will rain. We just can't tell you how much. There are some things that we can say, but we can't say too much about it in your area specifically. And we'll talk about that as we go along here. Okay, next 7 days, what we can expect. This is a computer model here with how much precipitation we're expecting over the next 7-day period. The reddest colors are on the Gulf of Mexico and the East Coast, so those are the best areas for precipitation. The light green colors are a few hundredths of an inch. We may see some light snow over the next 7 days, but nothing major we're expecting. Maybe further to the north we get a bit more out of this situation. Now we'll jump to week 2. This takes us through the end of the month. And these next maps are all going to be temperature on the left-hand side and precipitation on the right-hand side. And these are all now based on probabilities. What is the likelihood of being below or above average? The cold that's there now is, there's going to be a couple more reinforcing shots of cold, but most of it's going to stay east of you folks and be glancing blows that give us the opportunity, and all the way over to the eastern seaboard, the middle Atlantic coast, they're going to be complaining about really cold temperatures. So it's a better likelihood through the end of the month that we stay on the cold side. You folks won't be quite as bad in your area. The message on precipitation is a bit mixed. The gray area is near normal. The green area has slightly increased chances. The tan area has slightly decreased chances. Now, these probabilities are not big, only slight. So it doesn't look like we're going to shut off. You may still see some snowfall, but nothing major appears right now. If we jump to February, now we're into the February outlook. These outlooks look very much like we would expect a La Nina. On the temperature side, the white means we can't say too much. The chances for cold tend to stay north of you guys, but we could see some cold shots that continue in February. Better chances for warm stay to the south of us. This area, especially in the northern plains, I was on a call this week with national folks, and they were talking about really unsure about what's going to be happening in this area. So it looks like the beginning of February we start to moderate. If that stays the whole month, we're still not sure yet. On the precipitation side, again, you're kind of in between. The drier areas staying to the south. You're close to this above average chances for precip, but again, nothing too much we can say. That continues on into the rest of, let's see, this didn't get updated. Okay, this is January, February, March, and the outlook looks very similar. You're kind of caught in between those areas. Now, this doesn't mean bad news. It doesn't mean that it's going to be dry. It means we just can't say too much related to that. And then we'll jump one more ahead. This is for April, May, June, and you're still kind of caught in that situation, kind of an in-between. So it's kind of a good news, bad news situation. I don't have good news to say that, yeah, things are going to get better. We've got a really good chance of getting better. But I also can, I won't say that it's going to continue to be bad, because at this point we can't say too much right now. So I would expect this year would probably be better than last year. Expect, because of how bad the situation was last year, I would expect it to improve. We just don't see that specific improvement coming just yet. So what that puts you into, this is another product called the Seasonal Drought Outlook, basically saying what does this mean for drought? Because we're not seeing that big improvement in precipitation we would expect, The brown area over you folks is the drought situation continues, and there is a better chance this gets us through the end of April, that there might be some development of drought into the southwestern part of the state, not into the central plains. Like we're watching, talking about that area being a better chance for below average precipitation. Okay, so again, something we've got to keep an eye on and continue to work our way through here. So, rest of the winter, looks like we're going to have cold, not as much to the east of you folks. I don't see serious issues for storms at this point. I'd probably like to see some good spring storms. We'll have to keep an eye on that, but we can't say anything specific about it at this point. From spring standpoint, again, our trend is towards wetter in the spring. Soils are dry, but the outlooks lean towards the wet side. Outlooks don't lean towards the wet side. Somehow I got this slide mixed up with another one I had. So, anyway, we'll jump through these here. Just a couple other places for anyway, God. All right, sorry about this, folks. Okay, if you like getting updates like this, and I mentioned this other webinar going on, the third Thursday of every month, there is an Outlook drought webinar that I am usually on. I did get on today so I could talk to you folks, but you can get on there and you get an outlook like this with a bit more in depth with some of the issues, where we talk about impacts, current conditions, what the outlooks say. And since the outlooks are updated the third Thursday of every month, you get them hot off the press to talk about them. It's free. You just have to sign up and log in. Send me a note, and that's not the correct login at the top. I'll show you where to sign up for it. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And then even if you don't sign up, these are recorded and saved, so you can go back and look at them later if you want to. I'm usually on there. I present about once a year, but most times I'm there to answer the ag questions. The other place to point you to from a data standpoint is our website. Just you can find out more about us, get information from us. But on our website we have an Outlooks page. You can navigate to our Outlooks page from there. We do an ag outlook. Basically, once a month, maybe twice a month during the growing season, we take those outlooks and put an ag spin on them. Let's talk about what's going on and some of the impacts for agriculture. If you can also sign up for our email list, so that when we update things, we'll send you an email and get an ag outlook, or you can just find them on our website. And here's our website again, and a little bit more about our contact information. If you do Twitter, I'm at Dennis Todey on Twitter, or the Climate Hubs are at USDA Climate Hubs. And then that's a picture of the staff. You get to figure out which one of the people is which. So thanks for having me. Sorry about the couple little glitches there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can at this point.
Okay, that was much better, Todey, or Dennis. Sorry, I came through much better. Were you getting feedback at all after I turned my mic off?
No, I was not.
Okay.
I was not.
Okay.
And if you've ever tried to give a talk where you hear yourself coming back a second or two later, it really messes with your mind. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Okay, any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? I got one, probably from your counterpart, Eric Snodgrass, I guess. He did a presentation about a month ago in Sioux Falls, and he said that the 10-day forecast is only about 50% accurate, 7-day forecast is 70%, 5-day is 90%, and then the 3-day forecast is 97% plus accurate. Is that something you'd agree with, or what's your thoughts there?
Well, and it depends on what you're defining as forecast. If you're saying 10 days from now, the high is going to be 43 and the low is going to be 27. Yes, there's not a lot of skill at 10 days. But at that 7 to 10 day period, or even 2 weeks, we still can give indications. Is it going to be a warmer period or colder period, wetter or drier? We do have times where we can give people heads up, and that's really helpful, especially ahead of big cold outbreaks, big warm-ups, or things like that. So, yeah, a 10-day forecast that's going to be exactly this on that day is not that great, but being able to give a general idea of how we're going to be compared to average out to 2 weeks is pretty good.
Okay, sounds good. I was just really curious, 3 to 5 day forecast on rain, so that's pretty accurate overall?
Yeah, yep, yeah.
They'll hold you to it then.
Give me a call. And precipitation, especially during the summertime, is a harder one to do. But it depends on what he again is defining. Is he defining rainfall and temperature, or just temperature, or some of the other issues? Rainfall is the hardest one to forecast. Temperatures we're getting pretty good on, even out to a week in advance now.
Awesome, thank you.
Hold on, another question.
I'm just curious if you were able to predict like the drought from last year, about the same time period where you guys had was kind of predicting this drought from last summer.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew in August it was going to be terrible. The reason we talk about El Nino and La Nina is there are things, when we're in those kinds of events, we have some skill out several months in advance, or even 6 months or so, and that skill is not great, but it's better than tossing a coin. There were some hints going into last year. We did have some hints, and we're concerned about drought issues because of dry soils going into going into last year. So we did have some concerns, but we didn't. We couldn't go whole hog and say, yeah, it's going to be bad, because we just didn't have enough skill to say that. I wish we did. I really wish we did, but we don't. So that's why we focus on times when we do have things we can say, and when we don't, we just say, here's a little bit we know, do the best with it that you can.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right, you guys take care. Have a good meeting.